That's some sort of what I'd say. But it essentially, you know, Lisle is built up on the biological understanding of life, which most scientists still hold. I used to have the psychologist come and tell us this, all about this. That is, the baby comes out of the mother's womb, and the world is new. The world, we don't know how much the baby brings out of what is their experience so up to that time, but day by day, hour by hour, month by month, year by year, that personality expands and has a chance to grow and has a chance to add to its appreciations of life. And it's a continual, it could be a continual process right till the day they die. And it should be. That would be the logical. So often it isn't, because folks thwart their growth. But I feel that would be, well, an interpretation I try to get out, that Lisle was working along the biological, natural, and along the mental, natural steps toward larger appreciation, growth, the fellowship of the world, people in the world, and the sense of one common humanity. Once Lisle got started, the numbers of Lilers who came back the next year, the next year, the next year, and helped out on the staff, every unit we used folks to help us. And we directed most of the units the first 20 years, I guess, almost all of them, but we were helped by Lilers who gave time to it, and without pay. I mean, we didn't have money to pay.
What is the most essential aspect of the Lisle method, would you say?
Well, I honestly feel that unless a person is working that believes in the other person and his right to form his own opinions, and provides the experiences which help him grow, that you're not really functioning at the real level of Lisle. Now that really involves what we ought to come to, the fellowship method. Over and over again in the reports of students, I think the greatest gain that more people have had was they felt Lisle was a fellowship group. That is, they felt support, the concern of others in them while they were there. They felt that there was meaningful relationships with those there, and they began to feel it with former Lilers. I mean, as you stand in the circle in most Lisle units, you think of others who were there before you. It isn't just an empty process. But one of the things that more students referred to that helped them to understand the fellowship method was the little statement that Edna brought in, which we had picked up from a professor at Hartford in one of those years before Lisle started. And you folks remember it. To say to yourself, whenever you find someone who disagrees with you, I will not let you go until you tell me why you think as you do. Then when the first unit was over and there came the second unit and the third unit, we told those who went out of Lisle, well, one cryptic way was, we are going to your fifth deputation. But in another sense, we mentioned to every group that was going, we've gotten to know you. Edna and I, we want to keep in touch with you. because we realized that what has happened with us here, the methods you've seen in operation, the philosophy we're following and so forth, won't die the minute you leave here. It can live on and grow in you all through life. And we would like to keep in touch with you. We are interested in you if you're interested enough to keep in touch with us. Now, in a way, we didn't form an alumni association the first year, but we did ask for them to write back and send us their feelings and evaluation.
I have to interrupt you and say that you have gone beyond your momentum because every time we have driven up from where we lived before, we came up this road, and here were these students, both from other countries and American students, and they were playing the game out here on the way up, and I can't tell you what joy it gave us to see them. They had done it on their own, and that's what we needed. People who knew them enough or were interested enough to want to know them enough. And then there were those 3 or 4 people who had done that before. And then they began. I've sat out there and watched them and just been thrilled to see how they had come through to a place where they were doing their own thing. And we knew that when they got back to where they lived, there was going to be something sitting out a button on somebody's bed somewhere, just because they were now together. And we as human beings, the world over, need that more than any other thing.
And the word for that really is fellowship, isn't it?
Yeah,
Right.
that's right.
Talk about that word.
Right. Well, I think I've set the base for it, because where they had a chance, sometimes they didn't get that chance. I've talked with a few who didn't know how, and who have spoken disappointedly that they hadn't been able to quite make it from here to there. But also in the homes of people of this country, how that has changed in the last few years, and not only the willingness, but the pleasure and the desire of sharing our way of living together and helping each other to know how to share. And I say this only because I'm afraid I wouldn't have another chance. Dewitt and I are delighted that this has happened.
Let's try to conceptualize what came out of that first summer in terms of the Lisle philosophy, and you can recapitulate the Lisle philosophy.
We realized, first of all, that the education we would be providing wouldn't be as easy as it might be if we could take a group and take them to another country and give them an experience of living abroad. Because the goals that we set were to develop attitudes of world-mindedness, to develop attitudes of community, world community, of neighborliness, of understandings of other people, of intercultural experiences. How do you achieve that just staying at home in the United States? Well, first of all, by having American and foreign students together, each one was learning from each other all the time. And therefore, we wanted a group where the ultimate number of ways in which there was mingling or sharing between the members of the group who came would be put into operation. That's experiential education when it works. Another thing, we realized that the problem of dealing with world-mindedness or world community was something that isn't illustrated at best by living in another culture. It may come in several different ways. And one of those was by having prominent, able speakers with generally with our point of view, come and tell students their life commitment. And I was in a position prominent enough with the Board of Missions here so that I could go to anybody in the Presbyterian or Baptist or Methodist churches and say, will you come for 2 days or something to come to a Lisle unit? And so many were affected. When they'd come, I wouldn't elaborately introduce them. I'd say, here's so-and-so, he's going to be with us 2 days, or he and his wife will be here. They're here just to share their lives. Talk to them, give time to them, and at some time they'll lead a discussion. One of our problems, among the others in the beginning, was how to fill the 6 weeks. The students had said in their survey, we don't want to be told. We're sick of listening to lectures. And then the question in our mind was, how? How could we work it out so that we didn't need to have that kind of an approach? And we had worked with teams before, and gradually we came to the idea of alternation. That is, you concentrate on one thing and then you get tired a little bit and you turn to something else, but your mind continues to work on the first part of it, and then you go back and forth. And so we put together the idea of teams with alternation, because we wanted to be sure that there was evaluation as well as community experience. And we arranged community experience for every team so that we had a new place each period for each team. So they got, each team got a variety of community experiences. Also, we decided as different than any group that up to that time we knew of among youth, there would be no leader for a team. That the team would know what was generally coming up, and then it would be up to the team with a community sponsor to work it out or to change if they wanted to. But, and that led to the idea of that each person really could be a leader at a given time. When a problem would come up, one person would be, perhaps having had experience, would say, well, shouldn't we do this? Another person at another time would take the leadership, and his idea or her idea would be accepted. And the group should work as a group. Now, this was before group dynamics. After the first unit or two, we had well, systematized it very carefully, but yet I've always said the success of any unit depends on thoroughness. That is, knowing what educational well, information or pattern or improvement it was due at any time, and helping to introduce it. And everything was indirect. I mean, yeah, you ask, well, many of you probably have asked questions at Lisle, and Edna or I have not answered them. But we would say, well, how does the group feel about this? I mean, we tried not to be dominant in that sense.
You provided a structure, but you did not try to control the results of that structure. The structure was well planned.
Right. Thank you for bringing that out. One of the institutions we started, which well, we were sort of more proud of than many others, was family council. That is, to have one period every day, after lunch usually, or it could be any time students wanted it, where the students, where we'd meet and say, well, how are things going? And any student could gripe, they could criticize the food, they could do anything, bring up any point that they didn't like about it, or that they did like. And that was like a pep valve. It allowed for a person to let off steam, don't you know? And if something was brewing and someone didn't like something, they could bring it there and it would be in the open, and the whole group would consider it. Well, I want to go back to one idea that just came. One of the greatest dangers of social work and of missionary work is the danger of having a holier-than-thou attitude. That is, you face your work and say, I can help you. And that very statement, psychologically, very often spoils what you're going to do. And we as missionaries felt that so strongly, and in Lisle, we tried to insulate ourselves against the possibility of that coming in. We knew that deputations might easily lead to that kind of a thing, and so the emphasis that my dear wife gave so often to the teams was, you go out to learn, you go out to associate. We hope you'll come back having made a friend and having learned about other people and understanding what's on their mind, as well as to share with them. If you go out to learn from them, then they will ask you for your opinions, and you can share too. But to avoid the holier-than-thou attitude is a terribly important thing. Now, one of the, I must come to this. By 1945, well, in the meeting of the Methodist Board of Missions in December of 44, it was decided that another young man would become the secretary of the Board of Missions for student work. Now that meant that Lisle, was literally taken out of the board. The board had never owned Lisle. They had always said, we don't have money for it. I was employed by it, and through me, they might have thought they owned it, but they couldn't run it without me. They had no one to take over. And our board, the advisory board, became an official board responsible for it, and we kept on. Now, that was the point. From then on, the board had no obligation necessarily, don't you see, to any church agency. Our board was made up of former Lislers, of professors, of many who were churchmen. But all of them agreed that Lisle should now accept the position which our educational procedures had meant for us. We were educational. And whatever religious emphasis came in Lisle would come naturally through the individuals who came with it. Each unit was different. The makeup was different. The amount of religious emphasis that was put on religion was because it was asked for by the members of the unit. That's a very crucial change in Lisle. And it's wild to, one reason we wanted to make it that way was because it fitted in with our sense that every individual was a different individual. They needed different things. They were ready for different things. They should be free to make up their own mind about different things. And therefore, in a double understanding, a Hindu could come in and think as he wants to and contribute and be a part of it without being oppressed by the fact that, well, I'm in a Christian organization.
What you were just saying, in a sense, is that you've been a Lisler yourself all your life, and you have changed and grown with the process, because as Lisle developed, they've been very different than the original unit. So have you changed in your outfit? Is that true?
Yes, that's true. I've been growing religiously all the way through life. Sometimes I felt guilty. Here I was I started under the aegis of a church, a Methodist board, and yet I believed in interfaith, and they didn't. And if I had blatantly come out with it, in some circles I would have been just shunted abroad. But I believe that each religion served its people, that each religion had the truths which had been brought together and systematized to a certain extent by their seers and prophets, and that each organized religion was helping people in different cultures to improve, to be at their best. Now, all religions fail. Christianity fails in quality. Other religions do too, but you have to take that into account, accept that. Although you want to work against it. You don't want it to happen, but it always will be. I'm a person who's always had hope and always operated actively for the things I believed in. And after today, I feel all the more confident that many of the ideas and the philosophy and particularly the educational approach and the good psychological approach to the growth of the human personality, that those parts of Lisle will never die, and that there may be some times when it's harder to collect young people, students for the program. There may be other times when it's easier, but I feel very hopeful about the future of Lisle. And particularly, I think in the last 4 or 5 years, the members of the board and other members of the Lisle Fellowship have shown that they're doing their best to establish Lisle in a way which would be helpful to this generation. We tried our best, and the other generations, we're not dead yet, and we won't give up yet. But it's up to others to be in contact with this generation.